That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, honestly, I thought we were going to easily be able to find a rebuilding team to break down this week, and I broke down probably about 12 Dynasty teams with podcasts over there on Patreon for Week 9, and honestly, every single roster we got sent. I mean, oh, we're 6-2. Oh, we're 7-1. Oh, we're 8-0. Good, true contender. I'm like, what am I supposed to say here? I can't act like this team should be a rebuilder. We had one team that was sent to us that I believe was 0-8, but the owner had already traded every veteran player for future picks. I was like, okay, well, you did your job. There's nothing I can even say with this team in particular. But this roster right here, I think this is actually an intriguing one that we got sent over there on Patreon from Champ Kid, Darren. My friend, thank you so much, of course, for being a part of the flock on Patreon. I genuinely appreciate it, and I'm going to be very happy to go through, talk in depth with this team right now. I know that a 4-4 roster, you don't necessarily think, okay, well, it's time to blow it up. 4-4 roster, you're thinking, okay, so let's try to make some moves here. Let's try to get some plays going for the fantasy football playoffs and make sure that I can find my way in. I will say, though, I don't think that's the play with this team. We'll get into exactly why in a second, but of course, if you have not already, make sure you go down there, drop that like, subscribe to the channel. Only if you play Dynasty Fantasy Football. If you don't play Dynasty, I mean, if you play in a keeper league, sure, you can be here. But if you don't play Dynasty, this is not going to be the spot for you. I'm sorry to say that. We have a ton of redraft videos you can find out on our other channel. But this channel here is for the diehards. And also, if you have not joined the flock on Patreon yet, don't know what you're doing, go over there, join the flock on Patreon, get your Fantasy Flock Network hat, get a podcast breaking down your team in depth, get access to our Dynasty rankings that are updated every single week over there, get into a Dynasty League with us over there on Patreon as well. We're going to have so many of those this offseason. Let's go ahead. Let's dive into this roster, and let's just start it off with the team itself. We also have a trade that we're going to be talking about at the end of the video that we got sent over for this team. And let's talk about the fact that, yes, it's a 4-4 roster, but it's a 10-team league, right? So if you're playing in a 10-team format, we naturally assume that the bar for you to actually have a team that's going to be competitive, a team that is going to be making a shot at the championship, that's going to be a lot higher than what you would have in a 12-team format. Let's just get that out there right now, that we all have to kind of change our expectations just slightly if you're coming from a 12-team league. Now, going over to this team in particular, we'll just take it position by position. At quarterback, we have Joe Burrow. I mean, with Burrow, you're starting him every single week regardless. I mean, you're looking at our backup options, Matt Ryan, Mac Jones. I'm fine rostering 3 quarterbacks, even in a 1-quarterback format, considering the fact that, I mean, you have so many bench spots down there that we can take use of, which is exactly how you should be running your Dynasty League. One of the podcasts I actually got out there for a Dynasty League on Patreon this week, someone had like 6 bench spots on their roster, which I was saying, okay, no, you're not playing Dynasty. This is like a different way of redraft. No, this is true Dynasty. I mean, this looks like it's a 25 player roster. But nonetheless, quarterback, we don't need to be changing anything. I would say if we are going to commit to the rebuild with this team, of course, if you could get anything for Matt Ryan, we would. If you could trade Matt Ryan and a future pick and go get someone like Trey Lance, that'd be fantastic. But in reality, you're not getting anything for Matt Ryan in a 1-quarterback format. There's just no demand for the position, especially in a 10-team league. So you're just going to be holding on to these players. Now, going over to the running back position, this is one of the main issues that I'm going to have with this roster. This running back position is going to be pretty damn weak. You would argue that our running back 1 on this team will be Josh Jacobs. Our running back 2 is Michael Carter. As of now, we have Daryl Williams in the starting lineup, but you're probably going to get Daryl Williams one more week. And Daryl Williams, this is going to be a running back that now it looks like he's going to be splitting this backfield with Derek Gore. So Daryl Williams in a committee, probably not someone that we're excited to start. Probably not someone who's a top 24 running back, even when Clyde Edwards-Helaire is not in this offense. But looks like Clyde Edwards-Helaire will probably be coming back not this week, but next. So Daryl Williams will go to being a player that you cannot consider starting at all. So essentially, if we're looking at the running back depth on this team, knowing that, I mean, while yes, Boston Scott sliding up into a role that you can play on a week-to-week basis in Philadelphia. With Boston Scott, this is also going to be a running back, especially for a 10-team league. He's going to be a running back 3 at best. He's going to be in a committee backfield with Jordan Howard, with Jalen Hurts stealing rushing touchdowns. So a contending roster should never be in a situation where they're playing Boston Scott. You have Kenyon Drake, essentially just the handcuff to Josh Jacobs at this point. So for a 10-team league, we would say, what is Josh Jacobs, the running back 19, running back 20 rest of season, around that range. So you have a low end running back 2, high end running back 3. And then we could say the same thing with Michael Carter. Now with their long-term value, I actually think that Josh Jacobs, and this is very weird to say because he was drafted back in 2019. I think Jacobs may be slightly undervalued as a long-term asset in Dynasty. Now, remember, yes, he was drafted back in 2019, but at the time of the NFL draft, the time he declared for the NFL draft, he was only 20 years old. So right now, Josh Jacobs is 1 month older than Najee Harris. He also has the 5th-year option on his contract. So from a long-term value standpoint, we really like Michael Carter. We really like Josh Jacobs. But for production this year, we are behind the 8 ball at the running back position. I would argue that Joe Burrow probably around our quarterback 11, 12 rest of season. So we have a high-end quarterback 2 for our quarterback spot. Now we have 2 low-end running back 2s for our running back position. And going over to wide receiver. Now this is going to be kind of the nail in the coffin and why I think that we should be almost packing it in and why I think we should be making plays for the following season. Because we see that down there on the IR, we have Michael Thomas not coming back this year. And that's going to put us in a very difficult position where, yes, as of now, we have Deebo Samuel as our wide receiver 1. Deebo Samuel's been the wide receiver 2 so far this season in a points per game basis. He has been fantastic. I have him ranked as a mid wide receiver 1 for the rest of the year, drafted in 2019. Of course, you love Deebo Samuel currently in Dynasty. We have Adam Thielen in a 10-team format. It's going to be a low-end wide receiver 2. Chase Claypool, we are going to have him most likely as that wide receiver 25 to wide receiver 26 range. So you have a mid wide receiver 3 here as well. So just trying to assess the overall strength of this roster. At wide receiver, you are fine. Going down to the depth that we have on the team, we have Kenny Golladay and Julio Jones, hopefully coming back from their own injuries sometime soon. Now, I will say, wide receiver, we're kind of fine, but the problem is we just don't have that top-end talent now that we aren't going to be getting Michael Thomas back in here. And with wide receiver, I think that if every position on this team was average, it's kind of whatever. And wide receiver is definitely average if you're going to be taking just the temperature of the entire league with where we're currently at. I think you have an average wide receiver core. But when we have the below average quarterback, when we have the far below average running backs, you have to be dominant at the wide receiver position. Now, you are just dominant at tight end with Travis Kelsey. When we have Kelsey on this team, I'll say that he is clearly going to be the tight end 1 rest of season in fantasy 2021 leagues. But in Dynasty fantasy football, it's a little bit of a different situation because Travis Kelsey is 32 years old. I actually heard this on a podcast, but Travis Kelsey is closer in age to Larry Fitzgerald than what he currently is in Tyreek Hill. That's pretty damn funny if you're going to ask me. And right now, speaking of the trade offer that we had on the table, we're looking at the fact that we do have the ability to get out of Travis Kelsey and Boston Scott. But I will tell you right now, if you're a rebuilding roster, these players like Boston Scott, these players like Jeremy McNichols, we actually talked about this on that one team that was 0-8. They have no value to you whatsoever. Because a rebuilding roster that's playing for 2022, you should not necessarily be viewing your team and going, what is the best path for me to buy discounted 2022 production? That's not the way you should be going about it. Knowing that the Dynasty marketplace changes vastly just from, I don't even want to say season to season, throughout the calendar year. We know that the players that are going to be hot in Dynasty, by the time we get to May, June, July, they will be completely different than the players that we're talking about here. So instead of talking about that 2022 production, instead we should be focusing in on 2022 off-season value that we can go through and we can make trades with. So this trade that we got offered, I know on paper it doesn't look great, selling Travis Kelsey and Boston Scott for Allen Robinson, Antonio Gibson, Pat Freiermuth, a first and a third. Now, if we really break this down, I would say that I would rather have Pat Freiermuth over Boston Scott on a rebuilding roster, no question, especially with what we have seen from him as a rookie and considering the fact that, Eric Ebron not going to be in Pittsburgh next year. Now, the question is, are we going to prefer Travis Kelsey or Antonio Gibson, Allen Robinson, a future first and a third? Now, this is where I think we really have to be just kind of picking a direction that we're going to go with the team. Because obviously, if we make this trade, we are just putting the stamp on it that we are a rebuilding roster. And the reason that I think we should make this trade is because this will be the first step of many that we can go through and we can just kind of load up on those 2022 assets. Because once we trade away Kelsey here, and I know Antonio Gibson, Allen Robinson, some of the most disappointing players in fantasy this season. You cannot get away from that. But just speaking of their value this offseason, once J.D. McKissic most likely not going to be with Washington this offseason, I think a lot of people will be kind of viewing Antonio Gibson, who he will have that rookie contract attached to him. They'll be still viewing him as a player that does have the upside for 2022. And given his age, given his prospect profile, I think with Antonio Gibson from a dynasty context, this is a running back that you could actually say has it in his range of outcomes, at least if he shows any kind of flashes in the rest of the season here, which maybe he doesn't. But it's possible that he is just worth a first-round pick this offseason. If you get Antonio Gibson to be worth a first year, and you're essentially selling Travis Kelsey for 2 future first-round picks, and then Allen Robinson in the third, I think that could make sense. Because what we could also look to do with Allen Robinson, even if you don't like his long-term longevity, I mean, if he just signs to a different team this offseason, knowing that he is currently playing under the franchise tag, I don't want to say guarantee you, but I'm pretty damn certain that he's not going to go back to the Chicago Bears. So what does that tell us from a dynasty context? That tells us that once we get to free agency and you have Allen Robinson going somewhere else, we know that those free agents, they like to stay in the same division. I mean, maybe we get Allen Robinson over to Green Bay. I'm not saying it's guaranteed, but I'm saying it's definitely possible. I mean, we have seen that historical trend of those players staying within division. I wouldn't be surprised if you actually had the Green Bay Packers willing to pay someone like Allen Robinson, regardless of where he's going. We can say that the dynasty community will be bumping up Allen Robinson's value the second that he signs somewhere else. So Allen Robinson will be a better asset this offseason than he currently is at the same time. So it's a really intriguing trade to go through and to start making some different steps to have that long-term value. Now, in regards of what we are going to be doing with the rest of the veteran pieces on this team, we would have to go through and we would have to continue to sell some of these pieces off. I think our next trade would be going over to what we have with Adam Thielen and trying to combine Adam Thielen with one of these depth running backs that are only going to be valued this season. Daryl Williams, the perfect example. If we can then go through and package together Adam Thielen and Daryl Williams to try to get that long-term wide receiver, because I think it's going to be better to target a wide receiver in return, because if we're beginning to load up on those future first-round picks, I think that we will be able to find those running backs in next year's draft class. Now, I know next year's draft class is not supposed to be a good one at the running back position, but nonetheless, we know that historically betting on those rookie running backs is actually a pretty damn good bet with them being able to produce right away. So if we can say package a combination of Daryl Williams and Adam Thielen for a long-term running back in return, I mean, maybe that player would be Travis Etienne. I think that'd be fantastic. I know everybody thinks it's funny with how in I am on Travis Etienne, but everybody thought it was funny with how in we were on DeAndre Swift, the same exact running back profile, going to get the targets, going to get some usage in the red zone. At wide receiver, on the other hand, I think a perfect guy to go out there and target right now is actually someone who's risen up our dynasty rankings this season, and based on him being disappointing as of late, I think we could actually potentially make the swap to Devontae Smith. I think if we get to Smith, that would be fantastic. And especially if we kind of load up on some extra assets with that Travis Kelsey trade, like possibly we try to package together Allen Robinson and Adam Thielen, and we try to go get to Devontae Smith in that light. Now, going down to the bench, we'll have some other players that we are looking to cash out of, but we don't have that many veteran players that aren't going to be productive next season. I mean, I would say Kenny Golladay and Julio Jones are also going to be sell candidates if we decide to take this team down this path. But in regards to what we're actually going to be getting for them, Julio Jones, I actually think, we'll probably have to wait 2 to 3 weeks with both of these wide receivers to get them on the field, to get them producing, and then trying to sell at a high point. I would say if we're going to be trying to sell the combination of Julio Jones and Kenny Golladay, maybe you try to do that individually. But if I'm going to go over to my dynasty rankings and try to identify some players in a range where I think you could go out there and try to buy at a quote-unquote discount, I think a wide receiver that'd make a lot of sense. Oh, God dang. Elijah Moore breaking out on Thursday is you're not going to be able to get Elijah Moore now. That definitely sucks. We just looked at this. We definitely need to be moving Henry Ruggs down these dynasty rankings. But nonetheless, if we could move like Kenny Golladay away for Michael Gallup, if we can move, say, Julio Jones away for Brandon Ayuk, I think that those would be fantastic plays. Right now, if Kenny Golladay is our wide receiver 42 in those rest of season rankings, we have Gallup at wide receiver 39, considering the fact that Gallup will be a free agent this offseason, and you are going to be seeing him hopefully go to a team where he can command more targets. I think that'd be a fantastic swap. I mean, he's a lot younger. I think he has that 2022 value. So I hate to just be like the wet blanket on the situation, but I think if we take a fair assessment of this roster, with the news that we're not going to get Michael Thomas coming back this season, with the fact that we do have our future first-round pick, with the fact that we do have this Travis Kelsey trade on the table, and I can tell you that Kelsey's not going to be worth this in the offseason, I think it's probably a good spot to just kind of turn this team into a rebuilder, sell some of those productive veteran players right now for that long-term value. Because the issue is with a roster like this, if you do say go all in to win right now, we need to be trading away our future first. Like, the problem is we're just stuck in no man's land, where if we kind of just sit here with this current roster, we're probably not going to be good enough to be competitive and win this year. Yet at the same time, we are going to be losing out on so much long-term value. We're going to be losing out on value like Adam Thielen, Travis Kelsey, Julio Jones, Kenny Golladay, players that I can guarantee you are going to be worth drastically less this offseason than they're currently worth now. So we have to pick a side. You have to go all in on contending, trying to make this team good enough to win this season, or we just kind of have to wave the white flag here. Go, okay, well, we lost Michael Thomas. That's probably a big enough blow where we're just not going to be able to have a competitive roster. Obviously, Josh Jacobs has been disappointing so far. So if we just kind of wave that white flag, that's going to be raising this floor in the long term so much higher. I think that this team does have very intriguing pieces to build around. I think you're getting a clear cash out opportunity with Travis Kelsey. So you don't have to go through and rebuild this team, but you just have to pick a lane. You have to pick a lane. Are we going to be rebuilders? Are we going to be contenders? And if I'm going to be honest here, I think that in a 10-team league, it's probably a team that we would just want to be rebuilding. If it was a 12-team, 14-team format, I'd say, hell yeah, let's go through. Let's trade that future first. Let's try to bring in that veteran producer at the running back position to try to get us over the hurdle. But I don't think we can do it in a 10-team format. There are going to be too many dominant rosters elsewhere. And I am very sorry that we were that wet blanket. I really hope that you enjoyed this video. And keep in mind, I hope this helped you out at all. And of course, for anybody else watching this video, thank you so much for checking it out, even though this was pretty much made for one person and one person only. Of course, thank you, Champ Kid. And if you have not already, go down there, drop that like on the video, subscribe to the channel. And if you want to, go consider joining the flock on Patreon. When you join the flock on Patreon, you get a Fantasy Flock Network hat. You get our rest of season rankings. You get our Dynasty rankings. You get a podcast breaking down your Dynasty team. You get in Dynasty leagues with us in the offseason. I told a lot of people this. I can't start any Dynasty leagues during the season. That's just way too hard. I have way too much on my plate right now, but I'm excited to make Dynasty videos every single day once we get to the offseason and only talk Dynasty because you know it's the best way to play. And yeah, thank you so much for everybody supporting the channel. Really hope you all have a great day, and I really hope I see y'all with the video not tomorrow, but probably earlier next week.